Okay.
Releasing on October 27th and part of the Jewish International Film Festival this year is a fascinating documentary called Welcome to Yiddishland. And it's my great pleasure to be speaking to the director of Welcome to Yiddishland, Ros Horin. Ros, welcome to Movie Metropolis.
Thank you very much, Peter. Nice to be here in this big metropolis.
Now, it's nice to see the re-emergence of Yiddish, which, of course, we know what happened and why it not disappeared, but certainly was very little.
Endangered. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, was endangered, and especially with a number of young people who want to re-emerge Yiddish as a vital language and so on. So, Ros, how did the documentary come about? Because it seems so well researched.
Well, I tell you what, COVID was very helpful for research. I spent at least a year, looking online and writing emails and meeting people, discovering what was happening in the Yiddish world because I hadn't known anything about it, Peter, this revival at all. And it was my friend Evelyn Crape in Melbourne who first alerted me to, that seemed to be a revival happening in Melbourne and that they were trying to start up the Yiddish theatre group there again, and they were doing, innovative work. Like you're probably aware of the production of Yentl, which has come from there and is opening at the Sydney Opera House this week. So, I went to Melbourne, did some workshops with people, but, I discovered that incredible big band, Yid, which was quite a phenomenon, a 23-piece Yiddish big band, that was something. And then I thought, well, I can't just make a film about Melbourne. It's not quite big enough. I wanted to see if what's happening in the rest of the world. And I started looking in obvious places like New York and Montreal, places where there are big Jewish communities, and um, uh, Germany and Poland. Or I sort of looked everywhere, and I decided, the subject is so vast, and how do you set parameters? And I decided, well, what I was interested in were artists, performing artists that were young people reconnecting to Yiddish. I guess because I'm a theatre person myself, and I think the arts really move culture forward. So that's how I got into it. But there was extensive research, and it was very good because I was able to build relationships with people over a number of Zooms. I couldn't have just turned up cold in Berlin and found Daniel Kahn and said, "Hello, I want to interview you for a film." But by the time I went, I knew a lot about him. We talked, and he knew, what I was interested in, and we'd had a number of sort of Zoom connections. That was how it was with everybody. So, then I was able to go right over and say, okay, you've got this concert on then, and when's it going to be a chance to interview you, and blah, 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 blah. But it was a number of trips. I mean, I was back and forth like a yo-yo, during, in 2021, I was able to do a bit of filming in Melbourne, but it was still COVID, so it was, a few times I could get into Melbourne. But other than that, I didn't really start filming until 22, 23. And I did a lot of travel back and forth between Europe and New York and Israel in the end as well. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, what a process, and I can understand that. And
Yeah.
Barry Kosky is so fascinating in Berlin.
Mm.
His opera or whatever is incredible.
It's review. It's a review,
Review,
no,
yeah,
yeah, no storyline. It's just a series of acts like you would have got at the Catskills or, somewhere else as a review. Yes. But
yeah,
no, did you find that interesting, Peter?
very much so. Yeah, uh,
Yeah, I was very lucky with my timing for that because, Barry Kosky's an international opera director doing the big world repertoire operas. And I know his roots were in Yiddish, when he did the Dybbuk back in, when he was just beginning in Australia, in Melbourne. But I had no idea if he was, still interested in Yiddish or doing anything. And by chance, I found myself listening to a BBC podcast, and it said, and we're now going to introduce Barry, talk a bit about Barry Kosky's Yiddish stage. And I went, what? and and during COVID, he was just he did a couple of things in the empty Komische Opera auditorium, and he had a couple of opera singers, and he was at the piano, and he was playing, beautiful Jewish melodies and singing them. So I thought, oh dear, well, not oh dear, oh great, I'll research and see what else, are they doing anything else at the Komische Opera and blah blah blah. And it turned out that coming up was his, it was the end of his 10 years tenure as artistic director, and he thought, instead of doing another opera, I'm going to give them something really different. And I'm going to give them this all Yiddish, all singing, all dancing review. So I was so lucky. I wrote to him, and he remembered me as a colleague from Melbourne theatre and so on. And he was very generous and warm, and gave me the time, allowed me to film the show and come into some rehearsal, interview him at length, etc.
Okay. In all the filming that you did do, did you have a production team behind you, or was it largely you? How did it all work in terms
Well,
of
I had a
filming?
very good producer,
Yep.
a single producer, Jeff Daniels, and I worked with many different crews, Peter. We couldn't afford to take a crew overseas with us,
Mm.
and so I just picked up crew wherever I was, in New York, in Berlin. I had a number of different crews in Berlin, then Weimar, then Haifa, and so on. Yes, I mean, there was one shoot that we took. Catherine Millis, who was my DOP in Melbourne, we took her to one shoot to help with the Caravan Orchestra, in Haifa. Oh no, in Weimar. Pretty much it was, just connecting with whoever we could, but it worked out. We had very good people we worked with, and Jeff was a great help putting all that together.
Excellent, because this is such a prescient documentary about, as we've been talking about, the re-emerging of Yiddish. Uh, was it easy to find the young people that you wanted to interview for the film?
Well, one person led me to another. You'd ask questions, you'd meet the beautiful Sveta Kundish, and I'd say, well, who else is there, that's interesting? And she said, oh, you might like to meet this person. So it was very much like an internal networking thing of one person suggesting another. And, obviously I interviewed in the end, quite a few more people than who ended up in the film, like you had, and I already have a lot of people in the film.
Mm.
Um, yeah, so there were people who get dropped the last minute because you have to find, everybody has to earn their place. They all have to offer a different perspective, or another angle on the overall themes. Yeah, but it was through introductions really that and asking questions all the time. Who's
Yeah.
doing what, where?
Yes. And you also have some excellent archival footage
Yes,
in the film as well. Now that must have been quite a search.
it was quite a search, and we had our associate producer who was working with Jeff, Amy Brown, was fantastic on sort of coordinating that archival research, and Stephen Robinson, our editor, who I think was brilliant, and he came up. He came, there ended up being a lot more archival material in there than I might have thought as the director at the beginning, because Stephen kept saying, well, let's get some images of the Catskills, let's get this, let's get that. And, so he was adding real value in terms of what he was suggesting in archival material, which was great.
Yes. So with all of that footage, the interviews, Barry and Yentl in Melbourne, all of that sort of stuff, the editing process is always the most difficult. So how did
Yes.
that go?
No, it was good. I loved it. I had what you call an outline or a treatment, I sort of had a treatment. I had done all my selects of what I thought were the best bits, that I wanted in there. And you pass, as a director, you pass all that on to your editor and say, these are my favorite bits that I want. And he came up with other good bits. I think we worked really well together. We tussled, argued it out over some things, of course. But no, it was a very constructive process. We sort of had a guiding framework of what we were looking for in each beat of the film. Yeah. And the structure sort of, I'd had so many outline, so many goes at ordering the structure. I love working on structure. It's one of my favorite things from all my years of developing new Australian plays at the Griffin Theatre Company. So I do enjoy structure and material. But some of the structure ended up as I had first thought in writing, but a lot of it just developed organically, in the editing room. You suddenly thought, well, if I've got Husky and Gideon here, it would be really good to have the Isaac Bashevis singers be coming before it, or, we just kept playing and moving it around until we felt we had a satisfying dynamic structure. For me, it's like music. You have to feel the energy changing between beats. Yeah.
Yes. No, I understand. No, well done on that. Is one of the aims of your film, Welcome to Yiddishland, to have it screened, obviously, in Australia and internationally, so that this will assist the re-emergence of Yiddish?
Yes. It gives it, yes, it's sort of, I must say, all the people who are in the film are thrilled that the film exists. It's sort of, it kind of puts it out there, it gives it something lasting and concrete. It captures a moment in time, being these sort of last couple of decades, I suppose, and some of the beauty of the work that's being done, and it gives it a weight and a solidity to have it recorded like that. But I also want the film. I always felt I was making the film for a broad audience, not just a Jewish audience, not just speaking to within the tribe, because I very much I think it's terribly important at this time where there's such a rise in anti-Semitism as, a result of the war in Gaza, which is horrific. And as a consequence, there's so many reductionist views of Jewish people, so much cliches and stereotyping and narrowing, so that people are put in. I don't need to repeat what those stereotypes are, but I feel that this film will play a really valuable role in making people understand the diversity of Jewish identity, the nuances and the layers of what it means to be Jewish. You can be Jewish and not have the faintest interest in religion, as some of these people don't and others do. You can be secular. You can have a huge variety of views on Israel, and not be interested in it at all, be appalled by it, be whatever, But there's people who define themselves by the Jewish culture, of which there is an incredibly rich history and world history. And so I wanted people to appreciate that there's not one view, one type of Jewish person. And we do, as Barry says, I think he put it so provocatively but succinctly. He said something like, I noticed that in film and television there are two types of Jews: dead Jews, from the concentration camps, and Jews with guns on their shoulders, in the West Bank. And there's a whole world in between.
That's a very good comment. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And it's so interesting, over the last few years at JIFF, Jewish International Film Festival, there have been some films screened in Yiddish, both contemporary and of course dating back to the 30s. Which is, it's so interesting, and it's great that Yiddish hopefully is back.
Yes, I think it is. I don't think it's just a fad. I see and hear from the people I'm now connected to that there's more and more people getting involved, and the numbers of people learning Yiddish. One of my great old friends is a Yiddish teacher, and she's based in Oxford, and she teaches classes all over the place. And she says, you can't believe the diversity of people that are doing it, from priests to somebody who was a judge who was on the Nuremberg trials, to people who just love literature, like our lovely Irish woman, Carrad, in the film, who, she's happily Catholic, but she's very into Yiddish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's another language.
It's another. That's right. It's
Yeah,
another language,
yeah,
and there's a big gay contingent of people into Yiddish. You know, certainly amongst Jewish people because they feel more accepted in the more progressive Yiddishist circles, perhaps than in some mainstream Judaism. But also not even not Jewish gays. You know, just people who identify with this kind of fringe language. Yeah.
yeah. Oh, excellent, excellent news. All right, now it's releasing in Australia October 27th, and also, of course, as part of JIFF. And
Yeah.
I notice it's also been submitted because I'm a professional member of ACTA to
Right.
the documentary category.
Yes. It has. I don't know if they've selected their nominees yet, or I don't know where all that's up to. But I put it in anyway.
Yes, no, that's
Yeah.
great. No, nominees won't
Yeah.
be announced just yet, but yeah, okay,
Yeah.
very good.
Yeah.
And
Good.
and Ros, I must commend you because you choose some interesting topics. The Balcombe Hills African Ladies Troupe was such an
Oh,
enjoyable film, and
thank
Rosemary's
you.
Way, of course.
Yes. Oh,
So
thank you, Peter. Yeah. Yeah, I know they're not always mainstream topics. You know, I do remember when I was talking to people, I'm making this film about the revival of Yiddish, and you know, people going, it's a bit of a what's the word? You know, well, opposite to mainstream.
yeah,
Niche,
yeah,
you know,
niche,
niche,
yes,
people,
yes,
niche. That's right. I thought, oh,
yeah.
well, there we
Well,
go.
but that's
You know,
okay. That's what we have
it's okay. That's
documentaries
right.
for. Yeah, yeah,
That's right. That's right. Well, the revival of, you know, an Aboriginal language, that's niche too, you know.
sure. But just as
Yeah.
important. Yeah. No,
Yes.
that's
Yes.
great.
Yeah.
So, Roz,
Yeah.
I'm intrigued. Are you working on another film at the moment?
Well, I'm just doing research, Peter. I've sort of got a number of ideas floating around, nothing at all settled yet, but, you know, I'm just sort of Googling away and reading articles, you know, thinking I definitely want to have another, you know, would like to do another film, but I'm just, there's no rush, you know. I've got a lot of work to do to get this film out into the world.
Yes.
And, you know, we're submitting it to a lot of international festivals, of course.
Oh, I was
Um,
going to say yes. So that would be so important to have it
it is, it
internationally
is.
screened. Yeah.
That's right. So if people are interested in coming to the event screenings,
Yes.
like the first screening in Melbourne is November the 3rd, and that is when it's an event screening in that there'll be a Q&A afterwards with me and Professor Rivka Margolis,
Uh-huh.
and and then there'll be some live Jewish music, and then the one in Sydney is on November the 6th,
Yeah.
and that will be simply a Q&A with Professor Joseph Tolt, you know, interviewing me, and again, some different music, you know, live Jewish music. So
Yes.
they'd be nice ones to come to. Yeah.
Does the film have a website where people can
Oh
also find
yes,
out more
yes.
information?
Oh
Go for
yes.
it.
I think we've got a fabulous website. I'm very excited, Peter. We've just launched it, and it's www.welcometoyiddishland.com.
.com.
So
Okay.
nice and simple. Yeah, yeah, you can look it up. It's got big biogs on all the artists and information on Yiddish and the film. Yeah, it's pretty good, I think.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, congratulations on the film. We've been speaking to Ros Horin, who's the director of Welcome to Yiddishland. See it at JIFF, Jewish International Film Festival, and on release October 27th in Australia. Ros, thank you so much for talking with me.
Thank you very much, Peter. Nice to talk to you. Bye.
Okay, all the best. Bye-bye. Or
Bye.
shalom.
Shalom.